Senate will come to order. The senators will please take their seats. The senators and all in attendance will please stand and be led in prayer by the Honorable William M. Stanley, Jr., 20th Senatorial District. Following the prayer, all will please remain standing and be led in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States by Ophelia Anwa, Senate Committee Operations Intern, Senate Clerk's Office. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, sir. It's always great to see you, sir. Great to see you.
Good morning. Good morning. Let us pray together. Mighty and loving Father, creator of heaven and earth, we praise you and adore you. You are the King of kings. We humbly ask your forgiveness for our sins, to have mercy on us, O Lord. As we are gathered here today for our session, send us your Holy Spirit to be our guide and give us the wisdom to understand every topic that we are going to discuss and every vote that we are going to take. Enlighten our minds and let your love be upon us. And may today's session bring both success and growth to this body. Bless us as we pray, and bless the entire General Assembly family. Give us inspiration to meet the needs of the future. Give us the wisdom to know thy will and the courage to perform our duties. We thank you, Father, for this precious time that you have given us together. All of this we pray through our Lord Jesus Christ, your Son, who lives and reigns with you in unity of the Holy Spirit, one God forever. Amen.
I pledge
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The clerk will call the roll. All those in attendance will please record your vote aye. Clerk will close the roll.
You have a quorum, Mr. President.
Thank you, Madam Clerk.
Senate Journal for Monday, February 15, 2021.
Yes.
It's on. Senate Journal for Monday, February 15, 2021.
Senator from Hampton, Senator Locke, moves that the reading of the journal be waived. All in favor of waiving the reading of the journal will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 34, noes 3.
Ayes 34, noes 3. The reading of the journal is waived. The clerk will report any communication from the House of Delegates. Senior Senator from Fairfax, Senator Saslaw.
Mr. President, I move that we waive the reading of the communications from the House of Delegates.
Thank the Senator. The question is, shall the reading of the communication from the House of Delegates be waived? All in favor of waiving the reading will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 34, noes 5.
Ayes 34, noes 5. The reading of the communication from the House of Delegates is waived. The clerk report any communication from the governor.
We do not have any, sir.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Is there any other business to come before the Senate in the morning hour? Do any senators wish to be recognized? Seeing none, the clerk will call the calendar.
Senate calendar for Tuesday, February 16, 2021. Unfinished business, Senate. Senate Bill 1155.
Senator from Northern Fairfax, Senator Howe.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that we concur with the House substitute. Speaking briefly,
Senator, has the floor.
This bill is the plan for capital outlay. It doesn't require anything. It's simply a plan of what's in the future. There was a technical, basically, error that we picked up. The House didn't. They still don't want to pick it up, and frankly, some things aren't worth quibbling about. So I would move that we concur with the amendment.
Thank the senator. Do any other senators wish to be heard? Seeing none, the question is, shall the Senate concur with the House substitute? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 39, noes 0.
Ayes 39, noes 0. The Senate concurs with the House substitute.
Uncontested calendar, House bills on third reading.
Senior Senator from Fairfax, Senator Saslaw.
Mr. President, I move that all House bills on third reading on the uncontested calendar, it's pages 2 through 10, HB 2031 through 2294, be advanced to their final passage in a block after the adoption of any amendments thereto, and any member desiring or senator desiring to remove a bill from the block, please do so after the clerk has read the number of the bill.
Thank the senator. The question is, shall the House bills on the uncontested calendar, third reading, pages 2 through 10, House Bill 2031 through House Bill 2294, be placed upon their final passage in a block after the adoption of any amendments thereto, with the understanding that any senator desiring a bill be removed from the block will do so after the clerk has read the number of the bill. All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The motion is agreed to. The bills are before us in the block. The clerk will read the number of the bills.
House Bill 2031, the committee amendment has been adopted by the Senate, and there are 5 floor amendments.
Mr. President.
Senator from Hanover, Senator McDougal.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move the floor amendments be waived.
Thank the senator. The question is, shall the reading of the floor amendments be waived? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The reading of the floor amendments is waived. Senator from Hanover, Senator McDougal.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move the floor amendments be agreed to in a block, and I heard speaking to that motion.
Senator has the floor.
Mr. President, I heard the groans from the members about the number, but they're really only a couple concepts and they're repeated. Mr. President, after this bill came through yesterday on uncontested docket, I talked to Delegate Aird, and we shared the same concerns, and I worked with her between yesterday and today to come up with this language, and it really does 3 separate things. Mr. President, it takes the authorization language away from local governments or local governing bodies and puts it with the General Assembly, so it makes it by statute. It requires that any of the data that is collected to be maintained under the exclusive control of a law enforcement agency. And then thirdly, Mr. President, it requires that in order for that data to be accessed, it has to be by a search warrant. So, Mr. President, when you look at what these changes do, it is further protections for individuals' biometric information. Mr. President, I would tell the members of the body that when biometric information is collected, facial recognition, unlike a fingerprint, is one that is open in the public. For you to obtain a fingerprint, you actually have to leave it somewhere for it to be collected. We need to make sure legislatively that the rules are in place to protect the public in the use of this information, and make sure that when law enforcement is actually accessing this information, it is only with a search warrant and probable cause. So with that, Mr. President, I move the amendments pass.
Thank the senator. For what purpose does the senator from Fairfax City, Senator Peterson, rise?
Rise to speak to the amendment.
Senator has the floor.
Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, first of all, I want to say I support the amendment, and let me give a little bit of background. Facial recognition technology has been around for 20 years, and in fact, it was a hot topic about 20 years ago. When I first came to the House of Delegates, we had legislation that strictly limited facial recognition technology for just this reason, that it can be an incredibly invasive technology, that it just tracks people walking down the street, walking down the boardwalk at a ball game, and can instantly match them up with any number of databases, outstanding warrants, outstanding tax bills, unpaid judgments. And as a result, it should be very concerning to those of us living in a free society. I think Senator McDougal's amendments do a great job of basically strictly cordoning off the use of this information, that it can only be accessed through a warrant. I will say, this is the one bill that I wish the pages were here, because long after we're gone, I guarantee you local governments are going to be coming back to strip off a lot of these protections. And I wish the pages were here so I could say to them, the burden's going to be on you young people to make sure that you preserve freedom, because it is such a fine line that can happen, again, when some of these protections are taken away. So, again, I support the amendment.
Thank the senator. Do any other senators wish to be heard regarding the floor amendments? Seeing none, the question is, shall the floor amendments be adopted? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The floor amendments are adopted.
House Bill 1845, reported for the Committee on Rehabilitation and Social Services. House Bill 1846, reported from the Committee on Transportation with a substitute.
Senator from Western Fairfax, Senator Marsden.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the committee substitute be adopted.
Senator has the floor.
Actually,
you don't have to explain if you don't want to.
I don't.
You don't? Okay, perfect.
Questions it?
Thank the senator. Question is, shall the floor substitute be adopted? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The floor substitute is adopted.
House Bill 1850, reported from the Committee on Transportation with amendments.
Senator from Western Fairfax, Senator Marsden.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the committee amendments be agreed to.
Thank the senator. The question is, shall the committee amendments be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee amendments are agreed to.
House Bill 1851, reported from the Committee on Transportation. House Bill 1879, reported from the Committee on Rehabilitation and Social Services. House Bill 1901, reported from the Committee on Transportation. House Bill 1960, reported from the Committee on Transportation. House Bill 1961, reported from the Committee on Transportation. House Bill 1962, reported from the Committee on Rehabilitation and Social Services. House Bill 1973, reported from the Committee on Rehabilitation and Social Services. House Bill 2010, reported from the Committee on Rehabilitation and Social Services. House Bill 2024, reported from the Committee on Transportation. House Bill 2069, reported from the Committee on Transportation. House Bill 2071, reported from the Committee on Transportation with amendment.
Senator from Western Fairfax, Senator Marsden.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the committee amendments be agreed to.
Thank the senator. The question is, shall the committee amendments be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee amendments are agreed to.
House Bill 2092, reported from the Committee on Rehabilitation and Social Services. House Bill 2131, reported from the Committee on Rehabilitation and Social Services. House Bill 2197, reported from the Committee on Rehabilitation and Social Services with amendments.
Senator from Arlington, Senator Favola.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move that the amendments be agreed to.
Thank the senator. The question is, shall the committee amendments be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee amendments are agreed to.
House Bill 2213.
Mr. President.
Senior Senator from Virginia Beach, Senator D-Staff.
Can House Bill 2213 come out of the block?
Without objection, House Bill 2213 will be removed from the block.
Mr. President.
The junior senator from Chesterfield, Senator Chase.
On page 6, could House Bill 2069 also come out of the block, please?
Without objection, House Bill 2069 will be removed from the block.
House Bill 2216, reported from the Committee on Transportation. House Bill 2266, reported from the Committee on Rehabilitation and Social Services with a substitute.
Senator from Arlington, Senator Favola.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move that the substitute be agreed to.
Thank the senator. The question is, shall the committee substitute be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee substitute is agreed to.
House Bill 2294, reported from the Committee on Transportation.
Question is, shall the House bills pass in a block? That is all bills except for House Bills 2213 and 2069. All in favor of the motion.
Mr. President.
For purpose of the junior senator from Chesterfield, Senator Chase rise.
Thank you, Mr. President. Could, on page 9, House Bill 2266 please come out of the block?
Without objection, House Bill 2266 will be removed from the block. Question is, shall the House bills in the block pass? It is all bills except for House Bills 2213, 2069, and 2266. All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 39, noes 0.
Ayes 39, noes 0. The bills in the block pass.
Returning to page 6, House Bill 2069.
Senator from Western Fairfax, Senator Marsden.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the bill pass. And speaking to that.
Senators, the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. This bill deals with military decoration license plates, not military status plates. Establishes a system for determining the cost of special license plates for recipients of a military decoration based on the order of precedence of such military decoration as determined by the Federal Department of Defense or other relevant federal agencies. I think that it goes in and certainly mentions some of the types of metals they're talking about here. But with that explanation, I move that the bill pass.
Thank the senator. For what purpose is the junior senator from Chesterfield, Senator Chase, rise?
Thank you, Mr. President. Just a quick question for the patron, if I could.
Senator Yield?
I yield.
Senator Yield, you have the floor.
Just a quick question about House Bill 2069, just a point of clarification, making sure I understand this correctly. Is this an overall increase in the fees for our military veterans?
Senators, the floor.
I do not believe that to be the case. It just creates special license plates, which and the bill changes from one time to an annual $10 fee for certain special license plates issued after the effective date of the bill. So it just basically shifts the obligation on funding.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank the senator. Do any other senators wish to be heard regarding House Bill 2069? Seeing none, the question is, shall House Bill 2069 pass? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 39, noes 0.
Ayes 39, noes 0. House Bill 2069 passes.
On page 8, House Bill 2213.
Senator from Hampton, Senator Locke.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the amendments be agreed to.
Thank the senator. The question is, shall the committee amendments be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee amendments are agreed to. Senator from Hampton, Senator Locke.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that HB 2213 be approved.
Senators, the floor.
Okay, thank you, Mr. President. HB 2213 directs the Secretary of Natural Resources, the Secretary of Health and Human Resources, and the Secretary of Commerce and Trade to establish a work group to study the mining of gold in the Commonwealth. The bill requires that the study be conducted in consultation with the Virginia Council of Environmental Justice and appropriate stakeholders, including experts in mining, hydrology, toxicology, and other fields, environmental organizations, representatives of potentially affected communities and localities with significant deposits of gold, and residents of Native American communities in such counties. And with that, Mr. President, again, I move this passage.
Thank the senator. Do any other senators wish to be heard regarding House Bill 2213?
Mr. President,
Senior Senator from Virginia Beach, Senator D-Staff.
Will the gentlelady from Hampton rise for a question?
Senator Yield. Yes, Senator Yield, you have the floor.
Mr. President, if you can ask the gentlelady how many active gold mines there are in the state of Virginia.
Senator, the floor.
Mr. President, I have no clue.
Further question?
Mr. President, then I'll close it with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Do any other senators wish to be heard regarding House Bill 2213? Seeing none, the question is, shall House Bill 2213 pass? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 23, noes 16.
Ayes 23, no 16. House Bill 2213 passes.
On page 9, House Bill 2266.
Senator from Arlington, Senator Favolo.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move passage of the bill and speaking to the motion.
Senator, the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. What this bill does is it defines an outdoor refreshment area. It allows local governments by ordinance to adopt up to 3 areas with a public safety plan within their jurisdiction. And then it allows for consumption of alcohol through a licensure process with ABC, which identifies hours of operation, identifies a responsible licensee, adds other conditions to this outdoor refreshment area. And with the substitute that we adopted earlier, this bill conforms to Senate Bill 1471. The patron was Senator Donovan, and that bill passed out of the Senate 38-0.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. President. Again, I renew my motion that the bill pass.
Thank the Senator. Do any other senators wish to be heard regarding House Bill 2266? Seeing none, the question is, shall House Bill 2266 pass? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 39, noes 0.
Ayes 39, no 0. House Bill 2266 passes.
Regular calendar House bills on third reading. House Bill 1817, a bill relating to practice of certified nurse midwives, reported from the Committee on Education and Health, and there is a floor substitute.
Senator from Henrico, Senator Donovan.
Thank you, Mr. President. Speak to the floor substitute.
The Senator has it been waived?
Waive the reading of the floor substitute, Mr. President.
Thank the Senator. The question is, shall the reading of the floor substitute be waived? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The reading of the floor substitute is waived. Senator from Henrico, Senator Donovan.
Thank you, Mr. President. Speak to the amendment or the
Senator's the
substitute.
floor.
Mr. President, members of the Senate, I find myself in an awkward situation with this amendment because I would never want this amendment to in any way diminish my regard for certified nurse midwives. We started one of the early programs in Virginia at my hospital and a business that I ran, OB Hospice. And they have done amazing work. They have reduced the rate of C-section at Henrico Doctors Hospital. They've made women incredibly happy. They've allowed women to choose any kind of birth that they wanted. And it has really added depth and professionalism and value to my practice as an OBGYN. So when you look at this substitute, it is an attempt really to mediate between stakeholders and concerns that many senators had. I think personally, and I think there are other senators that agree, that the best way for us to vet ideas about how we change licenses in Virginia is to have the Department of Health Professions look at that. The governor appoints subject matter experts to boards like the Joint Board for Nursing and Medicine, where nurse midwives are followed, and it allows them to use their subject matter expertise, do a comparative analysis with all the 50 states, and really vet an idea to attain the goal we want, which is to have these nurse midwives be available to women who want to give birth with them more readily, but we do it in a thoughtful way, which is how we've always done things in the Senate, to be frank. So this bill reflects that principle, and basically this bill asks that the Virginia Department of Health Professions will take a look at this and develop the regs to proceed. It gives a delayed enactment, so the bill passes, but the enactment is delayed until next year, so we have time for that thoughtful process. And it makes a recommendation that comes from stakeholders that there be not immediate independent practice after graduation, but there be 25 proctored deliveries. So to my friends in the nurse midwifery community, you have my highest regards. Please don't take this as anything other than an endorsement of my support. It's just a process issue. So thank you so much, and I hope you guys will accept the amendment or substitute.
Thank the senator. Do any other senators wish to be heard regarding the floor substitute? What purpose does the senator from Southern Fairfax, Senator Barker, rise?
Mr. President, I rise to address the floor substitute.
Senator, has the floor.
Mr. President, I rise to address this floor substitute, which I am supporting. I think it is an appropriate type of compromise that has been put forth here to try to address issues as to how you transition to an independent practice if you are a certified nurse midwife. My background, professional background, is in healthcare. I'm not a practitioner. I'm not a doctor or anybody providing care directly, but my undergraduate degree was in economics and public health. My graduate degree, my master's degree, was in health policy and management from a school of public health. I worked in the field for over 40 years since graduating from the School of Public Health. And had a variety of different positions, including working as the executive director of the Greater Prince William Community Health Center. I, like the senator from Henrico, have a tremendous respect for nurse midwives. And in fact, when I was the CEO of the health center in Prince William, we had a thriving, very large practice that provided OBGYN care and prenatal care to a large number of women within the Prince William area. That practice was run by a nurse midwife, a certified nurse midwife who clearly had extraordinary training, extraordinary capabilities, and actually we often had OBGYN physicians who worked at the practice, at the health center. They worked under her direction. So it's, there are ways in which to do this to make sure that we are providing quality care. But I think it's important to address the issues as it relates to quality of care. None of us would like to go to a provider and find out later on that provider was not qualified, that had various problems. One of the things that is done is, as was addressed by the senator from Henrico, is that we have a system in place whereby when we're wanting to establish different licensures, different capability, different qualifications for licensure, that we have the Department of Health Professions evaluate that and provide a recommendation to us, because they're the ones that know a lot about these issues. They're the ones that can get the information. There are some people who would say, oh, well, this is just providing deliveries, births, prenatal care, that type of thing. It's not a big deal. It is a very big deal. As some people have suggested, probably in 95 to 98% of the cases when there's a delivery, there's no problem. Everything is great. You get a healthy baby, you get a healthy mother out of the process. But there are many instances, however, in which there are issues that come up during that labor period in particular, some of the latter part of the prenatal period, and particularly the delivery period itself. There are a significant number of infant mortality issues that we have in Virginia. We've had a problem with infant mortality for a number of years. Our rates for a state that is more affluent than the nation as a whole, we have, unfortunately, a very high infant mortality rate. And we have had that for a considerable period of time, going back to the 1980s, when I worked on some developed some studies for the health department that looked at those issues. And what we found was that there was significant disparity in the birth weight adjusted mortality rates of infants who were born in different settings. And it's important that we have that type of information when we're making decisions about who can practice and at what point they have the skills that are there to do it. What this bill does, as this floor substitute does, is it moves us toward independent practice for a lot of nurse midwives. That's reasonable and appropriate once they have it's clear that they have the skills and the ability to do it. And what it does, it sets actually a very low level, just only 25 deliveries to be able to move into that category of care there. This bill is not saying that we're going to come back next year and start looking at this anew. It is saying that the law will go into effect in July of next year, so that it's something that was there. It won't have to be relitigated at that point. If there are provisions that are recommended by the Department of Health Professions, we could address them, or they can, in many instances, could be handled by the boards who would do the licensing there. So I think it's important that we make sure that we do what we can to protect the health of the women of Virginia, to protect the health of the developing babies in Virginia, make sure that we don't end up with imposing risks that are unnecessary in this case. And I think it's important that we go through this process and that we get positive outcomes throughout the process. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank the senator. Question is, shall the floor substitute be adopted? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The floor substitute is adopted.
House Bill 2014. No, we need to pass.
You do passage. Senator from Portsmouth, Senator Lucas. The motion is for it to go by temporarily without objection. House Bill 1817 will go by temporarily.
House Bill 2014, a bill relating to the Virginia Residential Landlord and Tenant Act, landlord remedies, landlord's acceptance of rent with reservation, tenant's right of redemption. Reported from the Committee on General Laws and Technology, and there is a floor amendment.
Senator from Southern Fairfax, Senator Barker.
Mr. President, I move that we adopt the floor amendment. And speaking to that...
Senator, want to waive the reading?
Yes, I'd waive the reading of the floor amendment. I apologize.
That's okay. Thanks, Senator. The question is, should the reading of the floor amendment be waived? All in favor of the motion will say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The reading of the floor amendment is waived. Senator from Southern Fairfax, Senator Barker.
Now I will move the adoption of the floor amendment. Okay, we have a dissenting party. Let me.
Sorry, Senator from Southern Fairfax says the floor. Does the senator want to yield, or do you want to continue?
Let me pass this by temporarily, and I'll consult with my colleague over here. So,
without objection, House Bill 2014 will go by temporarily.
House Bill 2229, a bill relating to the Virginia Residential Landlord and Tenant Act, responsibilities of real estate brokers, foreclosure of single-family residential dwelling units. Reported from the Committee on General Laws and Technology.
Senator from Southern Fairfax, Senator Barker.
All right, this is Senate Bill, House Bill 2029. Did we discuss this one at some length yesterday? This deals with the issue that is raised when there's a single residential development, single house that has a tenant in it, and the house is sold. What this does is provide that after, if the lease is in effect, unless for the duration of the lease period, unless there is unless the person who's purchasing the house is going to live in the house. If the person who's purchasing the house is going to live in the house, what it provides is that the tenant there has a period of time, which would have to be at least 90 days in which to vacate the premises. This was something that was recommended by the realtors in Virginia, the Virginia Association of Realtors, and they came to Delegate Simon to have him put this in. And it is also matching up our Virginia law with what is federal law. And so I would make the motion that we would pass the bill.
Thank the senator. For what purpose does the senator from Fairfax City, Senator Peterson, rise?
Mr. President, rise to speak to the bill.
Senator has the floor.
Mr. President, I did a double take when I saw this language because it basically says if you buy a property at foreclosure, rather than having full rights of ownership in that property, as you would assume, you actually have a limited right of ownership because you take it subject to a lease, even though a lease is a subordinate relationship. I thought, who in the world would approve such a policy? United States Congress. There you go, exactly, the federal Congress. So the bottom line is this is federal law. I think it's a dumb law, but I'm not in Congress, so the bottom line is I did talk to representatives of the realtors, and they do want to match up state law with federal law. So one of y'all want to run for Congress and fix this, I suggest that, but other than that, there's not a lot we can do about it.
Thank you. Senator, do any other senators wish to be heard regarding House Bill 2229? Seeing none, the question is, shall House Bill 2229 pass? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 30, noes 9.
Ayes 30, noes 9. House Bill 2229 passes.
House Bill 2249, a bill relating to the Virginia Residential Landlord and Tenant Act, landlord charges for security deposits, insurance premiums for damage insurance, and insurance premiums for renter's insurance, filing of information regarding resident agent appointed by non-resident property owner. And the committee substitute has been adopted by the Senate.
Senator from Southern Fairfax, Senator Barker.
All right, Mr. President, I'm not sure whether this bill is as dumb as the one previously, but I'm going to move passage of the bill.
Senator has the floor.
And speaking to the bill, what this does, and this was explained and discussed to some extent yesterday, what it does is it provides that when a new rental agreement is assigned for a particular piece of property, it prohibits the landlord from requiring the tenant to pay more than an additional 2 months worth of rent as a security deposit, to cover insurance premiums for renter's insurance and for premiums on damage insurance. But the landlord can recoup the remainder if it's the 2 months rent is not sufficient to cover those items, can recoup the remainder by adding on to the rent in the months going forward with the rental agreement. This has been negotiated by the landlords and realtors and others and the tenant advocates on things. So with that, I would renew my motion that we pass the bill.
Thank the Senator. Do any other senators wish to be heard regarding House Bill 2249? Seeing none, the question is, shall for purpose Senator from King George, Senator Stewart, rise?
I'm sorry, Mr. President. Would the gentleman yield for a question?
Will Senator yield?
Yes, I would be happy to yield.
Senator yield, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. I was trying to read this very quickly again. I would ask the gentleman, would this put a landlord in a position of paying renter's insurance for the tenant and then trying to collect it after the fact through monthly rentals or some arrangement like that?
Senator has the floor.
Mr. President, I don't think the renter's insurance is there, but I think there's a there's a policy that would provide that coverage is required and that there is some reinsurance on that policy.
Further question?
I thank the gentleman, Mr. President.
Thank the Senator. Question is, shall House Bill 2249 pass? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 26, noes 13.
Ayes 26, noes 13. House Bill 2249 passes.
House Bill 2258, a bill relating to substantial risk order registry, maintenance, and access. The bill was reconsidered yesterday. We have one floor amendment from Senator Surville 2 from Senator Morrissey, and number 1 of Senator Morrissey's is in conflict with Senator Surville's.
Senator from let's start here, I guess. The junior senator from Richmond City, Senator Morrissey.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I'm going to defer to the gentleman from Eastern, Henrico, who I believe is going to withdraw his floor amendment, and then I'll speak to my 2 floor amendments, Mr. President.
Senator from Eastern Fairfax, Senator Surville.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. I didn't know I'd moved to Henrico, but I will withdraw my floor amendment.
Thank the senator. Without objection, the floor amendment is withdrawn. Junior senator from Richmond City, Senator Morrissey.
Thank you, Mr. President. Speaking to the floor amendments, first I move to waive the reading of the floor amendments.
Thank the senator. The question is, shall the reading of the floor amendments be waived? All in favor of the motion will say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The reading of the floor amendments is waived. Junior senator from Richmond City, Senator Morrissey.
Thank you, Mr. President. Speaking to the amendments.
Senators, the floor.
Mr. President, members of the body, yesterday we started discussing HB 2258, and as you recall, this simply authorizes the Department of Virginia State Police to release substantial risk order registry information to 2 different entities. One is to law enforcement agencies, and the other is to schools of higher education. There was some debate yesterday as to whether or not some of the language was not only superfluous, but also had the ring or tone of too much big brotherism. Those issues have been addressed, and if you look at the legislation, it now deletes the last word of line 13 all the way down to line 16. That was language, ladies and gentlemen, that dealt with monitoring and evaluating the administration and effectiveness of it. The Second Amendment, Mr. President, allows the Virginia State Police, it says may, and it goes directly to the heart of what Senator Surville was trying to do yesterday, release information upon request to institution of higher education. With that explanation, Mr. President, of the 2 amendments, I'd ask now for passage of HB 2258.
Thank you, Senator. We'll start with the amendments. Question is, shall the floor amendments be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The floor amendments are agreed to. Junior senator from Richmond City, Senator Morrissey.
Thank you, Mr. President. For the explanation that I've already given, I'd ask that the body pass HB 2258.
Thank the senator. Do any other senators wish to be heard regarding House Bill 2258? Seeing none, the question is, shall House Bill 2258 pass? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 20, noes 19.
Ayes 20, noes 19. House Bill 2258 passes.
House Bill 1801, a bill relating to disposing of litter penalty, reported from the Committee on Transportation.
Senator from Western Fairfax, Senator Marsden.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the bill pass. And speaking to that measure.
Senators, the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is a pretty straightforward policy choice here. It increases the minimum fine for dumping or disposing of litter, trash, or other unsightly matter on public or private property from $250 to $500. And that's what the bill does, and I move that it pass.
Thank the senator. Do any other senators wish to be heard regarding House Bill 1801? Seeing none, the question is, shall House Bill 1801 pass? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 18, noes 20.
Ayes 18, noes 20. House Bill 1801 fails.
House Bill 1805, a bill relating to aging services, economic and social need, reported for the Committee on Rehabilitation and Social Services with amendments.
Senator from Arlington, Senator Favolo.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move that the committee amendments be agreed to.
Thank the senator. The question is, shall the committee amendments be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee amendments are agreed to. The senator from Arlington, Senator Favolo.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move that the bill pass, and speaking to that motion.
Senator has the floor.
Okay, thank you, Mr. President. What this bill does is it adds some duties to the responsibilities of DARS, which is our Department of Aging and Rehabilitation Services. And this bill is, since we just adopted the amendments, now conforms to Senator Barker's bill, Senate Bill 1366. And it talks about prioritizing services to older persons. And the language reads that the prioritization should consider economic as well as social needs. And they do also define economic to be resulting from an income level at or below the poverty level. The committee had a robust conversation on this bill, and we think that this language now, that it conforms to Senator Barker's, will give DARS adequate guidance on how services should be considered and how our most vulnerable older persons should be served. So with that, again, I move passage. Senator Barker's bill did pass out of the Senate 23-16. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank the senator. Do any other senators wish to be heard regarding House Bill 1805? Seeing none, the question is, shall House Bill 1805 pass? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senator desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 25, noes 14.
Ayes 25, noes 14. House Bill 1805 passes.
House Bill 1813, a bill relating to highway construction by state or local employees limit, reported from the Committee on Transportation.
Senator from Western Fairfax, Senator Marsden.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the bill pass. And speaking to that measure.
Senator has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. This bill deals with highway construction by state or local employees, and what it does is increases from $600,000 to $700,000 the value of a highway maintenance and construction projects that are eligible to be performed by state or local employees, and this is a VDOT administration bill. And with that, I move that the bill pass.
Thank the senator. Do any other senators wish to be heard regarding House Bill 1813? Seeing none, the question is, shall House Bill 1813 pass? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senator desire to change their vote? Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 33, noes 6.
Ayes 33, noes 6. House Bill 1813 passes.
House Bill 1828, a bill relating to the Commissioner of the Department of Motor Vehicles, powers and duties, reported from the Committee on Transportation.
Senator from Western Fairfax, Senator Marsden.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the bill pass. And speaking to the bill.
Senator has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. This deals with the powers and duties of the Commissioner of the Department of Motor Vehicles. Back during the special session, we put language in that expanded his authority during an emergency to extend the validity of certain credentials up to 90 days. And all this does is codify what we did in the special session in the budget, and I move that the bill pass.
Thank the senator. Do any other senators wish to be heard regarding House Bill 1828? Seeing none, the question is, shall House Bill 1828 pass? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 29, noes 10.
Ayes 29, noes 10. House Bill 1828 passes.
House Bill 1903, a bill relating to local government authority reduction of speed limits, reported from the Committee on Transportation.
Senator from Western Fairfax, Senator Marsden.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the bill pass. And speaking to the bill.
Senator has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. This deals with local government authority to reduce speed limits. The bill authorizes a local governing body to reduce the speed limit to less than 25 miles per hour, but not less than 15 miles per hour in a business district or residential district. And with that explanation, I move that the bill pass.
Thank the senator. Do any other senators wish to be heard regarding House Bill 1903?
Mr. President.
Senator from Roanoke County, Senator Suderline.
With apologies to the chairman,
But can that bill go by for the day, please?
Without objection?
No objection here.
Without objection, House Bill 1903 will go by for the day.
House Bill 1932, a bill relating to child placing agencies, conscience clause repeal. Reported from the Committee on Rehabilitation and Social Services with a substitute.
Mr. President.
Senator from Northwestern Fairfax, Senator Boysko.
Thank you, Mr. President. Could that bill go by for the day, please?
Without objection, House Bill 1932 will go by for the day.
House Bill 2146, a bill relating to parked cars, VDOT right-of-way. Reported from the Committee on Transportation with amendment.
Senator from Western Fairfax, Senator Marsden.
Thank you, Mr. President. We're on 2146. Yes, thank you, Mr. President. What this original bill did was deal with parking.
Sorry to interrupt you, Senator. You want to move the committee amendments?
Oh, excuse me. I move the committee amendments be agreed to.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall the committee amendments be agreed to? All in favor of the motion?
Mr. President.
Senator from Hanover, Senator McDougal.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, ask the body to consider not accepting the committee amendments. When you look at this bill, it talks about the ability to protect animals on the side of the road. And the committee amendment, in essence, is singling out one type of animal in one condition, which might be difficult for somebody trying to help that animal from being saved on the side of the road. So with that, Mr. President, I would ask that you reject the committee amendment.
Thank you, Senator. Senator from
Mr.
Western
President,
Fairfax, Senator Marsden.
I would urge the body to support the amendment. The original intent of the bill was to deal with the having to stop in an emergency, to deal with any kind of vehicle breakdown or any kind of issues, and the bill defines what those emergencies are. Very, very clear and very good. It also says that you can deal with a companion animal and to retrieve that companion animal. The problem is it picks up hunting dogs, and in the bill, and what this does is clarify the fact that it is dangerous to release dogs on a public right-of-way to the dogs, and it's also an inconvenience and a real discomfort to people's property rights when you pull your car up in front of a home and release hunting animals. Very often it's the same time at dawn in front of your house every weekend, and the dogs run through your property and leave their business behind and disturb your animals and your peace and quiet. And the Virginia way is that you ask for permission to do that. So all this amendment really does is require that you conduct your hunting business of release and retrieving of dogs on private property. You can still retrieve your dogs going on foot into someone's property to retrieve your dogs. We have a right to retrieve in Virginia. But this just clarifies a good neighbor policy that we only do these things on private property where we have permission. And with that, I would urge that the amendment be agreed to.
Senator, what purpose, Senator from Franklin?
Dog
want to go first?
Yeah, from somewhere.
Okay. No. There's no senator.
Would the gentleman yield for a question?
Well, Senator Yield.
I yield.
Senator Yield, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. I asked the gentleman, first question would be, so if someone is picking up a dog that has been used for hunting on the side of the road, would they be guilty of a crime if they were found to be doing that?
Senator's the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think that there might be a parking violation of some kind or another that would derive from this. But in terms of any serious penalties for anybody, I don't think that is necessarily the case. But we do have to clear up, the notion that we should be hunting on property where we have permission and not releasing dogs onto land that we don't own and that we have not sought permission. That's just not the Virginia way.
Further question?
Mr. President, will you yield for an
Senator
additional
Yield?
question? Thank you.
Senator Yield?
I yield.
Senator Yield, you have the floor.
Mr. President, I asked the gentleman to consider, well, then, if it wouldn't be a parking violation, in my mind as an attorney for the past 26 years, it'd probably be a stopping on the highway kind of fine or one of those types of things, which is a misdemeanor. It appears from your bill that that you would, then the police, if they're going to catch this marauding hunter with his dogs, that they're going to have to prove that the dog was there for the purposes of deer hunting or had engaged in deer hunting. How are we going to enforce this law that you put in as by this committee amendment?
Senator's the floor.
Well, Mr. President, I think it's fairly obvious that when somebody has a shotgun in their car or a rifle in their car and they have a pack of dogs and they're releasing them, I think the original bill dealt with Fluffy getting away from its owner and you be able to retrieve it. But this is clear, and we know hunting when we see it, and I think police officers recognize hunting when we see it, when they see it. Excuse me.
Further question?
Mr. President, one final question.
Will Senator yield? Senator from Western Fairfax?
I yield.
Senator yields. You have the floor.
Mr. President, I'd ask the gentleman, so if I was in my car and I was wearing an orange hat, blaze orange hat, and I had my dog Marzi, who is named after you, who is a beagle, known for hunting, the breed is, and I had my shotgun on the back of the rack of that truck where I usually have it, lawfully placed, and I pulled off the side of the road because Marzi needs to go to the restroom, Got to find a little area where the grass is low enough. And a police officer comes and arrests me for that because of your bill. What are you going to do about that?
Well,
Senator's the floor.
Mr. President, I don't know what kind of a policeman with a racked rifle on the back of their, or racked shotgun in the back of their vehicle with one dog. And if you gave your explanation, I'm sure that would be sufficient, you being someone who is very trustworthy. And I'm sure it could be very convincing to a police officer that that's not what your purpose is. And that would be a very rare circumstance.
I thank the gentleman.
For what purpose, Senator from King George, Senator Stewart rise?
Would the gentleman from Eastern Fairfax yield for a question? No, I'm sorry. Prince William. Southern Fairfax.
I yield, Mr. President. We don't cotton to them Eastern Fairfaxers. We're Western Fairfaxers.
One of the 6 from Fairfax, Mr. President.
Senator yield. Senator yield. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to make sure I'm reading this right. As I read this bill, it protects your ability to stop and get your companion animal or your bird dog or your rabbit dog or any other dog, any dog there is, except it prohibits you from releasing deer hounds to deer hunt from the highway. Is that what this does?
That is correct, Mr. President, and
Thank you,
I
Mr.
think there's
President.
clear differences. Thank you.
Thank the Senator. What purpose is the senior senator from Chesapeake, Senator Cosgrove, rise?
Will the gentleman yield for a question?
Senator yield.
I yield.
Senator yield. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd ask the gentleman, first of all, I'd say, the best dog I ever had was a beagle. He was a great dog, and he lived for 12 years, and I still miss him to this day, and I had him as a little boy. Can the gentleman tell me how somebody's going to distinguish between my pet beagle and another beagle who's on the side of the road that somebody stops to retrieve?
Well, I think that thank you, Mr. President. I think it would be fairly clear there in Chesapeake if you don't have a rifle. That would certainly be your first line of defense, that you're not hunting. Most people in deerhound hunting do not use just one dog. I think you're talking about numerous dogs in that, and I don't think any policeman would bother somebody with one particular animal who is relieving himself on the side of the road or who happened to escape your custody, and that's what the original bill covered. So you're covered in that regard. But if you're not in the furtherance of deer hunting, you're good.
Thank you, gentlemen, and speak to the amendment.
Senator's the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's been mentioned several times, but if you're in your pickup truck and you have a racked rifle or racked shotgun, and by the way, we hunt with shotgun in Chesapeake. It's too flat for rifles. Just want to say that we have a lot of folks who are in Chesapeake who own pickup trucks. Heck, my whole district is mostly rural. Own pickups with racks in the back. So I think that as a determinator of if you're hunting or not is probably not a reasonable expectation. So I voted against the bill in committee specifically because this amendment was tacked onto it. And I understand that people are irritated when people come onto their property without their permission, and I can understand that. But at the same time, I kind of have a hard time with this amendment saying that the life of that hunting dog is not as valuable as the life of a companion dog. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank the senator. For what purpose is the junior senator from Richmond City, Senator Morrissey, rise?
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, would the gentleman from Western Fairfax County yield for a question?
Senator Yield?
I yield.
Senator Yield, you have the floor.
My question goes to the definition of emergency and companion animal. So let me cut to the chase. Is a child a companion animal?
It is not.
Senator's the floor.
Next question. Would the gentleman yield for another question?
Senator Yield.
I yield.
Senator Yield, you have the floor.
Ever been in a car with a 3, 4, 5, and 8-year-old, and one of them, despite repeated requests that they go to the bathroom beforehand, start jumping up and down and demand that they stop right there to do a little wee-wee?
And
Senator's the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Yes, I have experienced that with the 3 Wookiees that I raised, and yes, it can be what constitutes an emergency.
Final question, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Yield.
Mr. President.
Senator Yields, you have the floor.
Just to make sure that I'm obeying the law, if such an emergency situation happens and that child is doing what I just described, you can pull over, you can open the door, you can let that child do the business, and then you can retrieve same. Is that right?
That is my understanding, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank the senator. Do any other senators wish to be heard regarding the committee amendment? So there was an original motion with the recommendation to be rejected. I think there may have been a substitute motion. Senator from Western Fairfax, Senator Marsden.
I reiterate my motion that the committee amendment pass.
Thank the senator. So I would be approving the committee amendment. No would be rejecting it. Question is, shall the committee amendment be adopted? All in favor of the motion will say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. Chair is uncertain. We will have a recorded vote. Question is, shall the committee amendment be adopted? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 22, noes 17.
Ayes 22, no 17. The Senate adopts the committee amendments. Senator from Western Fairfax, Senator Marsden.
Thank you, Mr. President. The bill having been covered thoroughly, I move again that the bill pass.
Thank the senator. Question is, shall House Bill 2146 pass? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 24, noes 15.
Ayes 24, noes 15. House Bill 2146 passes.
House Bill 2262, a bill relating to traffic regulation bicycles, reported from the Committee on Transportation, and there is a floor sub.
Mr. President.
Senator from Bass, Senator Deeds.
Mr. President, could that bill go by for the day?
Without objection, House Bill 2262 will go by for the day.
House Bill 2342, a bill relating to marijuana legalization of simple possession penalties, reported from the Committee on Rehabilitation and Social Services with a substitute, and from the Committee on Finance and Appropriations.
Mr. President.
Senator from Arlington, Senator Favolo.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the substitute be agreed to.
Thank the senator. The question is, shall the committee substitute be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee substitute is agreed to. Senator from Arlington, Senator Favolo.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move now that the bill be passed. And speaking to that motion.
Senator has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. What we have just done is we conformed this House bill to the Senate Bill 1406. That's been, the chief patrons were Senator Eben, Senator Lucas, and Senator Morrissey. So the bill creates a cannabis control authority and establishes a regulatory structure and process for the cultivation, manufacture, wholesale, and retail sale of marijuana and marijuana products. I want to note that the bill does emphasize equity provisions and provide support and resources to persons and communities that have been historically and disproportionately affected by drug enforcement. The bill eliminates penalties for simple possession of marijuana effective July 1, 2021, and does modify other criminal penalties. The bill has staggered effective dates and allows for marijuana sales to begin on January 1st, 2024. With that overview and sort of 300-yard explanation of the bill, I again ask that it pass so we can proceed with this momentous effort. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank the senator. Do any other senators wish to be heard regarding House Bill 2312? Full purpose senator from Hanover, Senator McDougall, rise.
Mr. President, would the senator yield for a question?
Senator yield.
Yes, Mr. President, I yield.
Senator Yield, you have the floor.
Mr. President, I assume I know the answer to this, but I just want to make sure I'm accurate. Does the bill still not allow for the legal sale of marijuana until 2024 in Virginia, but allows for legalization of marijuana in 3 or 4 months whenever it would go into effect?
Senator has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. You are correct that the bill allows for the legal sale of marijuana in July 1st, 2024, but the possession of 1 ounce or less, simple possession, would be decriminalized July 1, 2021. So there'd be no penalty, civil or otherwise. I think it was just the last session that we made it a civil penalty. That would be removed July 1, 2021.
Mr. President,
Further question?
Senator yield for one additional question.
Senator Yield.
Yes, I yield.
Senator Yield, you have the floor.
Mr. President, I would ask the senator, if you can't legally buy it in Virginia, how can you legally possess it in Virginia?
Senator has the floor.
I would say to the senator that the actual retail operation that we're permitting by 2024 has a very elaborate process behind it. There has to be growth, cultivation, marketing, et cetera, and we need to take the time to write regulations to ensure that we have structures in place that fairly and adequately encourage such a market and also encourage social equity. And that's why there's a delay in the actual retail operation. And also we've allowed for localities to opt out. So opt out of participating in where the retail stores might be. Senator, the senator from Hanover enjoyed many hours of debate on this topic. He was on the subcommittee in Rehabilitation and Social Services, and he is a member of the full committee. So I'm sure he knows the answer to everything he's asking me, but I appreciate the dialogue.
Mr. President, I lied. I'm going to have one more question. And Mr. President,
Senator Yield.
I do.
Mr. President, as you know, a good lawyer doesn't ask a question for which they do not know the answer, or the answer doesn't matter to the response. But Mr. President,
I feel really important.
I would ask the senator, where is anybody going to be able to legally obtain this in Virginia? So are they going to have to transport it across state lines or buy it illegally in Virginia for them to legally possess it? Or those are the only 2 options?
Senator has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. I don't know how individuals might act, but it is possible that they could be given 1 ounce of marijuana possession, and I cannot venture to say where they might get it.
I thank the senator.
Thank you.
Thank the senator. For what purpose is the junior senator from Richmond City, Senator Morrissey, rise?
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, in response to the gentleman from Hanover's question to the gentlelady from Fairfax, I would say that there are numerous cases where there are distributions as a way of accommodation in the Commonwealth. Additionally, there are several medicinal distribution centers in the Commonwealth right now, including one just a few short miles from our Senate chamber. The bill provides for the legalization of marijuana. The bill does not address the distribution of marijuana. But in specific response to the senator from Hanover's question, you can have marijuana distributed to you either as an accommodation or somebody that has gotten it from medicinal purposes and still be in possession. This bill allows and prevents somebody who is in simple possession of less than 1 ounce of marijuana from being deemed a criminal. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank the senator. For what purpose does the senior senator from Chesapeake, Senator Cosgrove, rise?
Thank you, Mr. President. Would the chair of Rehab and Social Services answer a couple of questions, if she's able?
Will Senator yield?
Yes, Mr. President, happy to yield.
Senator Yields, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. First, I want to say how much work has gone into this on the chairman's behalf. And while I don't support the bill, she's worked really, really hard, as has Senator McPike on this. But two questions. In the bill in its current state, will growing marijuana at home be legal in July?
Senator, the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would respond that the Senate bill that passed did have an option for household growth. I think it was 2 mature plants and 2 immature plants. But I am happy to defer to the senator from Alexandria, who is the chief patron.
Senator from Alexandria, Senator Eben.
I think the senator from Chesapeake was asking about when
yes.
home growth would be allowed, and in the bill it provides for that in 2024. If it's reenacted, there's a reenactment clause as well.
All right, one more, and just to speak to this very briefly.
Senator's the floor.
I don't want Virginians to be under the impression that marijuana is going to be totally legalized, because it's still a federal offense. Okay, so if you're on federal property or stopped by federal authorities, you can have some jeopardy. Anyway, that being said, thank you for the answer to my questions.
Thank the senator. For what purpose does the senior senator from Virginia Beach, Senator DeSteff, rise?
Thank you, Mr. President. Will the gentlelady from Alexandria rise for a quick question?
Arlington?
Arlington.
That's okay.
Senator okay, I'm in the sister jurisdiction of Arlington, but pleased to rise for a question.
Senator Yield, you have the floor.
Mr. President, can you ask the gentlelady, if we're providing preferential treatment to one class of citizen, aren't we diminishing the rights of another class of citizen?
Senator's the floor.
I would say to the gentleman from Virginia Beach that the intent of this legislation is to ensure that we have an equity lens when we are administering licenses and privileges. And that is a value. It is something that we all stand for. We want to ensure that individuals and communities who had been disproportionately affected by the criminal enforcement of the possession of marijuana now have an opportunity to at least be at the table when the privilege of and the marketing benefits of growing and selling marijuana are actually bestowed.
Further question?
Mr. President, I'm going to have to take that as a yes, but one further question for the gentlelady from...
Senator Yield?
Yes, I yield, Mr.
Yield,
President.
you have the floor.
Mr. President, if you can ask the gentlelady that if neighborhoods that are disproportionately targeted by drug enforcement activities, are those generally neighborhoods that have a lot of drug activity within them?
Senator's the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. The criteria by which we define those neighborhoods that may have been disproportionately affected by enforcement have yet to be fleshed out in the regulatory process. So there will be a very involved and comprehensive stakeholder process by which we develop regulations that will more completely answer the question that is being posed.
Mr. President, if I could follow up with one quick question.
Senator
for
Yield?
the gentlelady.
Yes, I'm happy to yield.
Senator Yield, you have the floor.
And Mr. President, if you can ask the gentlelady that the way I understand the bill, it's not just neighborhoods disproportionately targeted by marijuana enforcement, it's disproportionately targeted by drug enforcement, meaning more than just marijuana. Is this how she reads the bill?
Senator, has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think that is a fair reading of the bill, but I would not necessarily leap to the conclusion that all neighborhoods in that category, or that would be the only criteria by which we would enforce the social equity priority.
Mr. President, so I just wanted to
Further
focus
question?
on the targeting of the specific drug enforcement, but Mr. President, I'm happy to go back to our social equity and our economic equity points of this if the gentlelady would follow for an additional question.
Senator Yield.
Yes, I'm happy to yield.
Senator Yield, you have the floor.
And Mr. President, will the gentlelady agree with me and agree with the statement that you can educate out of poverty?
Senator has the floor.
There are many factors that contribute to poverty. Social scientists have studied poverty for many, many years, and there are a number of things which I hope this body and other lawmaking bodies will undertake. The first of which would be a robust, high-quality early childhood education. Another element has been a minimum wage to ensure that workers who do work 40 hours a week can afford to feed and house their families. The federal government started Section 8 housing in an effort to break the cycle of poverty so housing could become affordable. And yes, high quality access to high quality public schools is a very important element. So there are a number of things. Families need to support children who are going to school. They need to have a stable household. They need to have services to allow them to pursue a life that is a life that will relay the values and benefits to their children that we would want all children to grow up with. I'm happy to go look at my Google and find some social science studies if that would illuminate the conversation.
Mr. President.
Further question?
I'd like to just ask what my original question was. Does the gentlelady believe that you can educate out of poverty?
Senator Yield.
I think there are many factors. I think a good education is a piece of that. I think there are a lot of factors that contribute to poverty, and it is a more complex answer than just one solution.
Further question?
Mr. President, I'm going to take this that the gentlelady agrees with me that you can educate out of poverty. And so based on that premise, because I truly believe we can educate out of poverty, but following up on that premise with one last question, Mr. President.
Senator Yield.
So I believe, and I believe the gentlelady and a lot of people in this chamber.
I just want to make sure Senator will yield to your question.
Yes, Mr. President.
All right, Senator Yield, you have the floor.
Mr. President, I believe that we can educate out of poverty, and I think we have a lot of examples here today sitting on the floor. Mr. President, I also believe that the gentlelady believes that I believe, which is you can truly educate out of poverty. Mr. President, my question to the gentlelady is, does she believe that drugs are a way to get out of poverty? So doing drugs, selling drugs is a way to get out of poverty.
Senator has the floor.
I would say to the gentleman from Virginia Beach that I don't know where he's heading with all of these questions, but I think this is a bill about a process to legalize marijuana, and whether somebody what tool somebody uses to make money is really, not particularly relevant to this bill. So I'm going to decline to respond because I don't think the question is really relevant to the bill before us.
Senator.
Mr. President, speaking to the bill.
Senator has the floor.
Mr. President, I believe you can educate it out of poverty all day long. I'm a great example of that. Mr. President, I think you can work hard and work out of poverty. I believe that all day long. I don't think you can do drugs, sell drugs, and get out of poverty. And what I'm trying to say here is we're perpetuating what we're trying to fix. So what we're doing here is we're saying if you've lived in an impoverished, disproportionately targeted, highly drug-enforced neighborhood, then we're going to offer you preferential treatment, which again, let's not mistake preferential treatment when you provide that to one group or class of citizens or any one person, you're diminishing the rights of another group or class of citizens. There's no way to do it without that. It's a balancing act. You can't take away somebody's rights and give it to somebody else without diminishing the rights of an individual or a class of citizen. But what we're doing here is we're saying if you grew up in a highly drug enforcement neighborhood, then we're going to give you preferential treatment, give you a drug license to sell marijuana in that same area or in an area, a neighborhood that's already afflicted by high levels of drug activity. And Mr. President, you can say the sky is blue or the sky is green or the sky is orange. But Mr. President, you'll never convince me, no one will ever convince me that you can drug somebody out of poverty, that selling drugs or doing drugs will get you out of poverty. Mr. President, I believe hard work, I believe ethics, and I believe education are the ways to get out of poverty. And Mr. President, I believe all day long we can have a helping hand and help somebody out and try to get them up. But when you're diminishing the rights of one group or class of citizens by providing preferential treatment to another, and this social experience or experiment we're about to get into by saying that if you grew up in a neighborhood and you've lived there 3 of the last 5 years where you or someone in your family have been disproportionately targeted or put in jail by selling drugs or for selling drugs, and we're going to give you a license or help you get a license to sell drugs. And let us not mistake, where you do sell drugs will be back in those same neighborhoods that you grew up in and your family grew up in selling drugs, that's going to have a better Virginia for any of us. Mr. President, I believe the only way out of poverty is education and hard work. And I don't think selling drugs back in a drug-enforced neighborhood, or a neighborhood, as we're putting it, disproportionately targeted by drug enforcement, it's drug dealers. We're going to say we're going to give preferential treatment to drug dealers to sell drugs back in the neighborhood to our children that we should be educating out of poverty, teaching them how to work hard and get out of poverty, and follow in the footsteps of folks in this chamber here who have truly been educated and worked their butts off to get out of an impoverished lifestyle. And Mr. President, we can talk about this, we can debate this all day long. I don't think you can ever drug somebody out of poverty. Thank you very much.
What purpose does Senator from King George, Senator Stewart, rise?
Mr. President, I was going to ask the gentlelady from Arlington if she would yield for a question, but I believe she's been badgered enough. So I would like to speak to the bill briefly.
Senator has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the body. As I looked at this bill as it came through the Senate and now with this substitute on Delegate Herring's bill, I just want to point out a few observations, and they've been touched upon by the gentlelady from Arlington. But I think that this really is a misnomer when you say you're legalizing marijuana. So what you're doing is you're legalizing small amounts. And in fact, if you have up to an ounce, that could be legalized as such. If you have a little bit over an ounce and you had the right things accompanying it, it could actually potentially be a felony. If you grow it in your backyard or elsewhere, it could potentially be a felony. There is no provision in this bill to allow you to have any, 2 plants or any, up until 2024 is what I think they ultimately agreed on, is after 2024 you could have 2 plants. And if you grow more than that, it could be a felony. And so I find myself agreeing with the ACLU, and that doesn't happen often. I will tell you, but when it comes to civil liberties, it concerns me a great deal, because what I see here is the General Assembly setting up a regulatory scheme to tax people and ultimately will criminalize probably more people than the war on drugs did. And I'm not going to support the bill. Don't misunderstand what I'm saying. But if you're going to do this, you should do it in such a way that you do not criminalize more people than the war on drugs did. And that's what's going to happen under this policy, because that's what this regulatory scheme is about. It's about giving certain people license to sell, and if it doesn't come from them, you're going to have misdemeanors and felonies all over the place, and people are not going to understand what they're getting themselves into. So I hope that if you're going to do this, you all will look at that closely and try to protect these people's civil liberties.
Thank the senator. For what purpose is the senator from James City County, Senator Norman, rise?
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise to make a preemptive comment before I ask the gentlelady from Arlington a question.
Senator's the floor.
There are some that have been in the Senate for more than a couple of years who realize that I was one of the pioneers in advancing the decriminalization of marijuana. So, Mr. President, it pains me to look at this bill. It pains me to look at it because of the pervasiveness of it. I'm a realist, and those of you that know me well, that I try to be pragmatic, and policies are business to me. I don't ever take it personal. What we've got is a coincidence right now, not of just new majorities in the House and the Senate, which is a natural political consequence, but we've also got some atmospheric conditions that are leading to some social adjustments. And once again, I would say many of those are long overdue and deserved. But what I have learned is that social equity reparations do not necessarily curtail the social use of illegal drugs. And I know from my professional experience a little bit about those atmospheric conditions. And there are reasons that you find a disproportionate amount of marijuana users in minority communities. That is not an indictment. That is just an observation that I've had professionally. So it pains me to not be able to support this bill because it is not an incremental movement in the decriminalization. It is an omnibus universal movement in covering at all areas. And there are some who have advocated this bill say, well, Tommy, you don't know what you're talking about. It was a couple of years ago, I went and spent 3 days in Denver, Colorado, where there was a symposium put on about Colorado's experience on the decriminalization and the legalization of marijuana. And it covered all aspects from disproportionate social uses to economic impacts to the regulatory process to the cost of the regulatory process. It was a very, very expansive presentation, and in spite of my slow learning, I did take some morsels away from that experience. My question to the gentlelady is this. I understand if she would be so generous to yield.
Well, Senator, yield.
I appreciate it very much.
Happy to yield, Mr.
Senator,
President.
yields. You have the floor.
This is not in the sense of a badgering question, not that I think any question on the floor of the Senate is ever badgering.
No.
What it is a question to make sure that I understand a narrow portion of this bill. I understand the preferential treatment for the issuance of licenses to minorities that you would say have been disproportionately prosecuted or the subject in law enforcement. That's my premise. My question is, these preferential licenses, must the dispensing of them, the facilities be located in those same communities, or should a licensee only have had to live in one of those communities for the 3 to 5 years?
Senator has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think that's a very good question. First off, I want to say to the
I only
Senator
ask
from
good questions.
James City County, I think that's an issue that could be decided in the regulatory process. I don't think it's appropriate for us to sort of prejudge how the regulatory process will conclude, but that is a question that should be raised and should be debated by the stakeholders before the regulations are actually issued. And I do want to say there's a strong public health protection in here. We are talking about adult use marijuana. We are trying to do this the right way, and this body has studied, as you mentioned several years ago, this body has studied both the decriminalization of marijuana and the legalization of marijuana. So this is, JLARC did an expansive study, and much of this bill relies on the background that JLARC had provided. So, thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. President,
Further question?
I thank the lady for her explanation, and I hope you did not take it as badgering, because I really am trying to sort this out in my mind. And sometimes when I have too much time on my hands, I think, which is really dangerous. And it's almost oxymoronic to me that if, in fact, we're going to locate some of these licensed marijuana dispensaries in communities that have a predisposition towards a higher use, I'm just having a hard time reconciling that. So I'm looking forward to the study. I really will. Thank you, ma'am.
For what purpose does the Senator from Alexandria, Senator Eben, rise?
To speak briefly to the bill.
Senator has the floor.
Mr. President, this vote is just one stage in the process of a complex organization of an industry. Cannabis can be as complex an industry as the sale of alcohol is today. And I just want to correct two misnomers that I heard. One is you won't find a significantly different percentage of use of cannabis in minority communities as in the community at large. In fact, studies have shown them to be similar. However, you will find a significantly disproportionate percentage of people who are charged with cannabis or who had been charged with cannabis, and then those that go to trial actually are more likely to be found guilty than those who are not in the minority. And I would just want to make a note about equity. Equity is a balancing act. When one group or more than one group has been disadvantaged for years, giving them an opportunity to be part of the process can start to equalize the playing field, and that's what we're talking about. Believe me, there'll be plenty of licensees of many types, and we're not talking about limiting them to one type. Similar to how we try and help SWAM or veterans, small businesses have equity by getting involved in contracting because they've been disadvantaged. That's what this is an attempt to do in part. So with that, I hope that the bill passes.
For what purpose does the Senator from Prince William County, Senator McPike, rise?
Mr. President, speak briefly to the bill.
Senator has the floor.
You know, I wish that people would actually utilize the reports provided by JLARC, our independent research agency. They're quite enlightening. Some of the floor debate and discussion today has gotten pretty far off track. The descriptions of overconsumption in poor or urban areas and its impacts are frankly false. Marijuana is bought and sold in rural communities, in rich areas in Fairfax and Arlington and Virginia Beach. The question is, do we provide a regulatory framework that controls the substance, the THC level, knowing that it's going to continue in our communities? Furthermore, our JLARC report, in their presentations, page 15 and 16, you'll note disparate arrest and conviction data. 3.5 times more likely if you're brown or black in the same communities, same usage rates as the senator from Alexandria indicated. Those are the facts laid out by our independent research agency. So I think sometimes these debates get a little far-fetched, and a little bit off the point of what the real policy questions are. I think there's some good ones, and remind the body that we have legalized marijuana use. There are positive uses. The question and policy question before is now adult recreational use, and what are the confines and questions that we have to address before the body, and urge the body pass the measure. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank the senator. For what purpose, the senator from Northern Chesapeake, Senator Spruill, rise?
Thank you, Mr. President. Speaking to the bill.
Senator's the floor.
Mr. President and members, let me start off by saying I resent the ways the members keep badging the senator. And I kept hollering, "Cause sit down, Bobby. Just tell him go to hell and sit down." That's what I would have said, because the question they were asked had nothing to do with the bill. I can understand if it was the bill, fine. And for y'all surprise, to my good white friends, all black people are not poor. Whenever you say something like this, the first thing they were saying, minorities. All black people are not poor. Then this bill, but there are some blacks who are not poor, who can have a license and sell this stuff when it's legal. Now, I got to behave myself because I don't want my two senators, my Senator Lucas and Senator Lott, that came into the window when I misbehaved myself. But I'm really hot. So some of these folks who really believe me, when they want to say something wrong, they hide behind the word minorities. Who in the hell are you talking about? Who are you talking about? Now, who do you think, when the minorities, as you want to call some of us, sell that stuff, where do they get it from? There's not one black person that I know of that can sell that stuff. Who you think gave it to them to sell? Some white person who bought it in for them to sell. Second point. What about all these kids who are not minorities when they drive past the black community and stop in those fine cars and buy a bag, whatever it is? What about that? So I'm just upset because I'm listening to him saying, reading the bill. It had nothing to do with the bill. And my colleague is trying her best, trying to explain. I want y'all to know, all minorities are not poor. I want y'all to know, some of us got as much money as some of y'all. And all white people, they ain't got money either. Now, I want to apologize. So, Senator Lucas, please don't take me to the window. I want to apologize. But I'm just sick and tired of all of us keep saying minorities. We're not educated because you're black. You don't have no money because you're black. You don't have no good house because you're black. And that's not so. Stop picking on black folks and other minorities. This is the good bill. If you don't like it, like Senator Norman did, speak on the merits of the bill. I can understand that. I'm asking y'all, so if I'm saying something out of order, please forgive me. But I want you to know that I'm just sick and tired of y'all picking on minorities. We got something just like y'all got. Bless your heart.
What purpose, Senator from Portsmouth, Senator Lucas, rise? You okay? What purpose, the junior senator from Chesterfield, Senator Chase, rise?
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise to speak against the bill.
Senators, the floor.
Mr. President, the thing that I'm most concerned about is that this is yet a step closer to full legalization of marijuana here in Virginia. And Mr. President, I don't want to come to a time where we have to change our slogan from Virginia is for lovers to Virginia is for drug dealers, because that's the direction and the path that we're headed on right now. And Mr. President, as a parent of 4 young adult children, I'm concerned what message this bill sends to our kids, our young adults. Are we sending the message that it's okay to do drugs now? Because as I've mentioned before to this body, I, like many of you, have gone into the jails in Chesterfield County and met with dozens of men and women who said that smoking marijuana was the gateway that led them to higher and more stronger drugs, heroin addictions. As a parent, I have to look at this bill and say, what is this going to do for the future of our state? What is this going to do for our children? And I still have yet to have anyone to send me a copy of data, scientific evidence showing that legalization of marijuana and moving in that direction improves one test score of our students. And with that, Mr. President, I will strongly oppose this bill. Thank you.
For what purpose is Senator from Eastern Fairfax? Senator Surville rise.
Speaking to the bill.
Senator's the floor.
Mr. President, I think most everything's said that's needed to been said, but I just want to point out that some of the conversation about the set-asides is really fascinating to me. You know, our government, we make decisions here every day that help certain groups deliberately, right? We give out tens of millions a year, I think, to counties that were impacted by tobacco. That's a set-aside. We give out money for economic development, and I see a lot of that money tending to go to usually pretty well-capitalized corporations that are controlled by certain people who, you know, I don't always agree with their policy. I rarely see our economic development dollars going to a lot of the folks that I represent. I also see our business in procurement often preferences people who have disabilities. And our government also gives out business opportunities to people who are veterans. And there's lots of people who have benefited from those types of set-asides. And all this bill does, from my perspective, is gives a small nod, in a lot of ways, towards a group that our Commonwealth has had its foot on the neck of for 400 years. And to me, you know, it's just one of many set-asides that we've done for many years. And I would just suggest that we all look in the mirror a little bit before we start criticizing each other's policy decisions, because set-asides are something the government has been doing for a long time. And it's a long time. And this is just one more step in the same direction we've been walking now since we've been making these types of decisions. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank the senator. For what purpose, Senator from James City County? Senator Norman rise.
Mr. President, the devil made me do it. With the gentleman from Eastern Fairfax yield for a very brief and simple question.
Senator yield.
I'll yield.
Senator Yield, you have the floor.
Mr. President, I thought I heard an intimation about economic development dollars and not coming to his area. Did I miss that the largest economic development project in the history of the Commonwealth of Virginia went to Northern Virginia? Did I misunderstand that?
Senator's the floor.
I think there's probably some truth to that, but I said the people I represent. I didn't talk about the folks that Senator Edmund represents. And last I checked, there's not a whole lot of people that work in the Route 1 corridor riding buses that work for Amazon. So that was who I was talking about, Mr. President.
Do any other senators wish to be heard regarding House Bill 2312? For what purpose, Senator from Portsmouth, Senator Lucas rise.
Speaking to the bill, Mr. President.
Senator's the floor.
I just want to say to the senior senator from Northern Chesapeake, that I am not going to take him to the window. And that though he said it in some terms that really struck a chord with some people, I pretty much agree with what he said. In fact, from 2015, and I think I said this before, to 2019, over 23,000 Virginians were arrested for simple possession of marijuana. This is nearly 5,000 Virginians a year. And black Virginians are more than 3.5 times as likely to be arrested for marijuana despite using a similar rate to white Virginians. And that's because of over-policing. JLOC found that racial disparities was true in localities across the state in every region. The General Assembly acknowledged that injustice last year when we decriminalized simple possession, and it was a good first step, but more is needed. This bill is that next step. It lays out a 3-year path to create a regulatory and licensing structure that promotes diverse participation in the industry and ensures that the product is safe for consumers and updates the criminal code to reflect legalization of marijuana for adults over 21. Mr. President, and I would hope that with all the work that's gone into this measure over the last several years, that this body would pass House Bill 2312.
Thank the senator. Question is, shall House Bill 2312 pass? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 23, noes 16.
Ayes 23, noes 16. House Bill 2312 passes.
House Bill 2318, a bill relating to test driving vehicles resident districts, reported from the Committee on Transportation.
Senator from Western Fairfax, Senator Marsden.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that House Bill 2318 pass. And speaking to the bill.
Senators, the floor.
What this bill does, Mr. President, it authorizes localities by ordinance to require motor vehicle dealers in the locality to notify a buyer or potential buyer that test driving a motor vehicle in a residence district that has been designated for increased fines is prohibited unless the buyer or potential driver is driving to or from his residence. This bill's been worked out through a number of groups, including the Virginia Automobile Dealers Association. And essentially what's going on here, Mr. President, is that if you happen to live in a certain location next to an automobile dealership in a residential neighborhood and the cars continually come through your neighborhood, disrupting the normal patterns of life, that the locality could ban that practice, and the automobile dealers can send people on different routes that don't disturb anyone for the test drive purposes. So that's what the bill does, and I move that it pass.
Thank the senator. Do any other senators wish to be heard regarding House Bill 2318? Seeing none, the question is, shall House Bill 2318 pass? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 21, noes 18.
Ayes 21, noes 18. House Bill 2318 passes.
Returning to page 10, House Bill 1817.
Senator from Portsmouth, Senator Lucas.
Yes, Mr. President. First of all, I moved. I don't have. Oh yeah, Mr. President, I moved to waive in the reading of the floor amendment. Where is it?
We've done the passage.
Okay, Mr. President, I move that the bill pass.
Senators, the floor.
Yes, sir. Mr. President, the practice of certified nurse midwives eliminates the requirement that certified nurse midwife practice pursuant to a practice agreement and provides that certified nurse midwives shall practice in accordance with regulations of the Board of Medicine and Nursing consistent with the standards for the practice of midwife set by the American College of Nurse Midwives and shall consult and collaborate with and refer patients to such other health care providers as may be appropriate for the care of the patients.
Thank the senator. For what purpose, Senator from Hampton, Senator Locke, rise.
Thank you, Mr. President. Unfortunately, I am going to have to vote against House Bill 1817, not because I don't support certified nurse midwives. I agree with the original bill and not this substitute. And I wish to apologize to the House patron because I have been receiving communications from organizations like Birth in Color and other organizations, birth workers, midwives, and doulas, who have some concerns about the substitute. And they feel as though this is hamstringing them and is going to cause complications for them as they move forward. So for those reasons, because of the substitute, I'm going to have to vote in opposition to House Bill 1817.
Thank the senator. For what purpose does Senator from Fairfax City, Senator Peterson, rise?
Mr. President, speak to the measure.
Senator's the floor.
Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, I know absolutely nothing about obstetrics. I know a little bit about politics. And if we want to move this bill forward, we need to get it into conference. And so therefore, I hope we pass the bill because I think it is a very good idea. And this is just one intermediate step in the road. Thank you.
Thank the senator. Do any other senators wish to be heard regarding House Bill 1817? Seeing none, the question is, shall House Bill 1817 pass? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 33, noes 6.
Ayes 33, noes 6. House Bill 1817 passes.
House Bill
Mr.
24.
President.
Senator from Mecklenburg, Senator Ruff.
I move that we reconsider the vote on House Bill 1801 on page 12.
Thank the senator. Question is, shall the vote by which House Bill 1801 failed be reconsidered? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 38, noes 0.
Ayes 38, noes 0. The motion is agreed to. Senator from Mecklenburg, Senator Ruff.
Mr. President, I move the bill go by for the day, please.
Thank the senator. Without objection, House Bill 1801 will go by for the day.
Returning to page 10, House Bill 2014. We have waived the reading of the floor amendments.
Senator from Southern Fairfax, Senator Barker.
Mr. President, I move that that bill be passed by for the day.
Thank the senator. Without objection, House Bill 2014 will go by for the day.
Page 16, uncontested calendar, House bills on second reading.
Senior Senator from Fairfax, Senator Sasslaw.
Mr. President, I move that all House bills on second reading on the uncontested regular calendar, pages 16 through 25, that's House Bill 1749 by 2217, that the rules be suspended and that the constitutional reading of the titles be dispensed with.
Thank the senator. The question is, shall the rules be suspended and the second reading of the titles of the House bills on the uncontested and regular calendars, pages 16 through 25, House Bill 1749 through House Bill 2217, be dispensed with? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 38, noes 0.
Ayes 38, no 0. The reading of the titles is dispensed with. The senior senator from Fairfax, Senator Sasslaw.
Mr. President, I now move those bills go by for the day.
Thank the senator. The question is, shall the House bills on the uncontested and regular calendars now on third reading?
Mr. President.
Senator from Franklin County, Senator Stanley.
Mr. President, I don't know if it's proper, but there is one bill in the block, HB 1806, on page 17.
Okay.
And I'd ask that be pulled out of the block and go by for the day.
They're all going to go by for the day. Unless you want that one to go by
All right,
by
then
itself.
forget what I said. I was distracted by Senator Marsden. He was making jokes. Sorry. Sometimes you don't get it right every time, okay? You guys are so perfect, aren't you? You didn't listen to my prayer today, did you?
Thank the Senator. The question is, shall the House bills on the uncontested and regular calendars now on third reading go by for the day? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The bills will go by for the day.
Uncontested calendar, House Joint Resolutions on third reading. House Joint Resolution 522, continuing the Joint Committee of the House Committee on Health, Welfare, and Institutions, the House Committee on Public Safety, the Senate Committee on the Judiciary, and the Senate Committee on Rehabilitation and Social Services, studying staffing levels, employment conditions, and compensation of the Virginia Department of Corrections. Reported from the Committee on Rules.
Senator from Hampton, Senator Locke.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that H.J.R. 522 be agreed to.
Thank the Senator. The question is, shall HJR 522 be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. HJR 522 is agreed to.
House Joint Resolution 567, directing the Joint Legislative Audit and Review Commission to study increasing the progressivity of Virginia's individual income tax system report. Reported from the Committee on Rules.
Senator from Hampton, Senator Locke.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that H.J.R. 567 be agreed to.
Thank the Senator. The question is, shall House Joint Resolution 567 be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. House Joint Resolution 567 is agreed to.
Regular calendar House Joint Resolutions on third reading. House Joint Resolution 526, establishing a joint subcommittee to study comprehensive campaign finance reform report. Reported from the Committee on Rules.
Senator from Hampton, Senator Locke.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that H.J.R. 526 be agreed to, and speaking to that.
Senator's the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. H.J. 526 establishes a joint subcommittee to study comprehensive campaign finance reform in the Commonwealth. And in conducting this study, the joint subcommittee is tasked with examining the cost of campaigning in the Commonwealth, the effectiveness of the Commonwealth's present disclosure laws and their enforcement, the constitutional options available to regulate campaign finances, and the desirability of specific revisions in the Commonwealth's laws. And with that, Mr. President, again, I move that H.J. 526 be agreed to.
Thank the Senator. Do any other senators wish to be heard regarding House Joint Resolution 526? For purpose, Senator from Roanoke County, Senator Suderline, rise.
Thank you, Mr. President. Speaking briefly.
Senator's the floor.
Mr. President, I never even served in the House. I don't know what that problem was, nor do I wish to. But Mr. President, I just find it interesting. We're in the second year of united government. I heard a lot previously for more than a decade about the need for campaign finance reform. I don't understand why it's only going to start a study now. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank the Senator. Do any other senators wish to be heard regarding House Joint Resolution 526? Seeing none, the question is, shall House Joint Resolution 526 be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. House Joint Resolution 526 is agreed to.
House Joint Resolution 527, requesting the Department of Conservation and Recreation, jointly with the Virginia Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services, to study the sale and use of invasive plant species. Reported from the Committee on Rules with amendments.
Senator from Hampton, Senator Locke.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the committee amendments be agreed to.
Thank the Senator. The question is, shall the committee amendments be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee amendments are agreed to. Senator from Hampton, Senator Locke.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that H.J.R. 527 be agreed to, and speaking to that.
Senator's the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. The resolution requests that the departments work with several state agencies, conservation, nonprofits, and plant industry and agriculture groups to develop recommendations regarding statutory and regulatory changes intended to reduce or eliminate the sale and use of invasive plant species in the Commonwealth and promote the sale and use of native plants. And with that, again, Mr. President, I move that HJR 527 be agreed to.
Thank the senator. Do any other senators wish to be heard regarding House Joint Resolution 527? Seeing none, the question is, shall House Joint Resolution 527 be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. House Joint Resolution 527 is agreed to. Senior Senator from Fairfax, Senator Sasslaw.
Supplemental calendar number 1 for Tuesday, February 16th, 2021. Uncontested calendar, House bills on second reading.
Senior Senator from Fairfax, Senator Sasslaw.
President, I move that all the House bills on second reading on the uncontested and regular calendar, pages 1 through 13, that's House Bill 1763 through 2263, that the rules be suspended and the second constitutional reading of the titles be dispensed with.
Thank the senator. The question is, shall the rules be suspended and the second reading of the titles of the House bills on the uncontested and regular calendars, pages 1 through 13, House Bill 1763 through House Bill 2263, be dispensed with? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 37, noes 0.
Ayes 37, no 0. The reading of the titles is dispensed with. Senior Senator from Fairfax, Senator Sasslaw.
I would now move that those bills go by for the day.
Thank the senator. The question is, shall the House bills on the uncontested and regular calendars now on third reading go by for the day? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The bills will go by for the day. Senior Senator from Fairfax, Senator Sasslaw.
Mr. President, I'd inquire of the clerk, does that complete the calendars for today?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Is there any other business to come before the Senate? For what purpose does Senator from Lynchburg, Senator Peake, rise?
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. I rise for a point of personal privilege.
Senator's the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. I was pleased to read in the paper today that our financial return is 700 million more, or 730 million more than we thought just last week. The governor sent a letter to the Finance Committee Senate Chairman and the House Appropriations Chairman to that effect. So when we were here last week voting not to conform to the federal income tax laws, when we voted to raise income taxes on the hardworking small businesses of the Commonwealth of Virginia between $350 million to $500 million, we were not aware that we had a windfall from our hardworking citizens, taxpayers, of $730 million. This amounts to an increase approximately $1.2 billion. That's a lot of money. I would ask this body to reconsider the vote by which we turned down the opportunity to conform the Commonwealth's tax policies with the federal tax policies, which would mean that we would not tax our hard-working small businesses. We have that opportunity. We have now just discovered we have another $730 million. This is not our money. It was never our money. It's the citizens' money. It's the small businesses' money. We need to return as much as we can. We have been living through a declared state of emergency. Our people have suffered. Their kids are not in school. They are not going to work. Restaurants aren't open or not to full capacity, to 25% capacity. Bars cannot have people in. Venues are closed down. How many stores have closed in your communities, on your main streets? How many clothing stores? restaurants, small businesses. Let's return some of this money. Let's conform to the federal tax plan. Let's return that $350 to $500 million. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank the senator. For what purpose, Senator from Hampton, Senator Locke, rise?
Mr. President, I rise on a point of personal privilege.
Senator has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, each February we honor Black History Month. This annual celebration honors the overwhelming number of Black women and men who have contributed to the advancement of human civilization. Black history should be viewed not as isolated and unrelated history, but inextricably as a part of American history. Today, I would like to highlight the struggle Black Americans face to achieve opportunities for a higher education and one institution that rose to challenge systemic oppression. And it just so happens that this institution is the alma mater of our finance chair, Janet Howell. Oberlin College was founded in 1833 as Oberlin Collegiate Institute and was a liberal arts college and conservatory of music in Oberlin, Ohio. 2 years after its founding, the predominantly white institution became the first ever collegiate institution to admit African American male students. 2 years later, the institution decided to accept women scholars, becoming the first educational college in the country, co-educational college in the country. The progressive values of its founders led to Oberlin becoming not just the first to admit Black students, but the first institution in America to accept students regardless of their race or gender. But most importantly, Mr. President, I want to speak about Oberlin's commitment to the Underground Railroad. Oberlin earned a reputation as a center for abolitionist activities, and many of the college's presidents embraced these efforts, transforming the campus into a major stop on the Underground Railroad as early as 1837. As one of the only integrated schools in the nation at that time, enslaved Africans escaping to freedom were able to hide in plain sight on the school's grounds before continuing on their journey to freedom. In 1858, a group of Oberlin and Wellington residents rescued an escaped enslaved African, John Price, from U.S. Marshals and took him to Canada. The liberators were jailed in Cleveland for violating the Fugitive Slave Act. The case grew national coverage for years, and those who attended the Ohio Republican Convention in 1859 succeeded in adding a repeal of the fugitive slave law to the Ohio Party platform. The rescue and continued actions of its participants brought the issue of enslavement to the forefront of national discussion. Later, the Oberlin-Wellington rescue was counted among the instigating incidents that set the country towards civil war. One of the individuals involved in this incident was a Virginian, John Mercer Langston. John Mercer Langston was born in 1829 in Louisa County, Virginia. At the age of 14, Langston enrolled in the preparatory department at Oberlin College. While a student at Oberlin, he excelled in debate. He graduated from the collegiate department, the fifth black man to do so. He involved himself in the Black Rights Movement. In 1848, at the invitation of Frederick Douglass, Langston delivered an important speech at the National Black Convention in Cleveland, condemning those who refused to help fugitive slaves. Langston enrolled in a graduate program in theology at Oberlin in preparation for later legal study. He obtained a master's degree but was denied entry to law school. Embittered but undeterred, he read law under Philemon Bliss of Elraya. Langston became the first black lawyer in Ohio, passing the bar in 1854. Langston later was the first African American elected to Congress from Virginia and finally president of Virginia State University. Historical records have allowed researchers to understand the depth of the abolitionist movement at Oberlin. The formerly enslaved John Price was not alone in finding a safe haven in Oberlin. Records indicate he was only one of several transient paupers supported by town funds and cared for by Black Oberlins in the 1840s and 1850s. Historians have inferred from 1859 speech by Black business owner and abolitionist John Watson that the town was indeed a sanctuary, at that time harboring 28 fugitives within the Black population. The college takes much pride in their abolitionist history and has made many efforts to commemorate their historical actions throughout the years. So I wanted to commemorate the work of the abolitionist institution, Oberlin College, and to thank Janet Howell for having been a student there. And thank you, Janet Howell.
For purpose, Senator from Northern Fairfax, Senator Howell rise.
A very brief point of personal privilege.
Senator's the floor.
I'm just so flattered that the senator from Hampton talked about my alma mater. And I just want to give you one small example of how history lives on. My junior year, the dorm I was staying in was an old house, pre-Civil War house. And in the back of the closet of the room I stayed in was a false back where escaping slaves would hide. Thank you, Mr. President.
Do any other senators wish to be recognized? Seeing none, the clerk will report any announcements on the desk.
Today, Tuesday, February 16th, the Committee on Rehabilitation and Social Services will meet immediately upon adjournment in the Senate chamber in order to re-refer one bill. The Committee on General Laws and Technology will meet immediately upon adjournment of Rehabilitation and Social Services in the Senate chamber. The Committee on Commerce and Labor will meet immediately upon adjournment of General Laws and Technology in the Senate chamber. The Committee on Privileges and Elections will meet 15 minutes after adjournment in the West Committee room. The Committee on Agriculture, Conservation, and Natural Resources will meet 1/2 hour after adjournment in the East Committee room. The Education and Health Subcommittee on Health will meet at 4 p.m. in the Senate chamber. Senators Lewis, Saslaw, Barker, Donovan, and Suderline. And if you're meeting in the Senate chamber, you should sit in your regular seat, please. Tomorrow, Wednesday, February 17th, the Committee on Finance and Appropriations will meet at 9 a.m., West Committee room. Committee on Agriculture, Conservation, and Natural Resources will meet at 9 a.m., East Committee room. The Democratic Caucus will meet 1/2 hour before session in the Democratic Caucus room, and the Republican Caucus will meet 1/2 hour before session in the Republican Caucus room.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Is there any other business to come before the Senate? Do any senators wish to be recognized? Seeing none, I call on Madam President, Senator from Portsmouth, Senator Lucas.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move that the Senate do now adjourn until 12 noon on tomorrow.
Thank the Senator. Question is, shall the Senate stand adjourned until 12 noon tomorrow? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The Senate stands adjourned until 12 noon tomorrow.